In a world that moves too fast, we often forget what it means to simply breathe, to sit with what hurts, to allow life, in all its beauty and its ache, to be what it is. But Thich Nhat Hanh, the gentle voice of mindfulness, reminds us of a truth as old as rain and as quiet as dawn. There can be no lotus without mud. Every joy you have ever known was born from a seed that once lay buried in the darkness of struggle. Every moment of peace carries the memory of pain that was understood, not denied. Suffering, he tells us, is not an enemy to destroy. It is a teacher, a doorway, a necessary soil from which compassion blooms. We live in a culture that tells us to escape our pain, to numb it, avoid it, drown it out with noise and distraction. But what if, instead of running, we stopped? What if we sat beside our suffering as we would sit beside a crying friend, patiently, tenderly, without judgment? In No Mud, No Lotus, Thich Nhat Hanh offers us not a promise of a pain-free life, but something far greater, a way to transform our suffering into understanding, our wounds into wisdom, and our chaos into calm. So tonight, or whenever you choose to listen, let us take a quiet walk together, through the mud of human struggle, toward the lotus of inner peace. Welcome to Guide to Reads, where every book is not just read, but lived. 1. The roots of our suffering. Dear friends, before we can transform our pain, we must first look deeply into it. Thich Nhat Hanh reminds us that understanding is the first step to liberation, that to heal, we must not run from our suffering, but rather sit with it, breathe with it, and listen to what it wants to teach us. Imagine your suffering as a small child who is crying. You can't silence it by ignoring it or scolding it. You must embrace it with tenderness, hold it in your arms and whisper, "I am here for you." This is the heart of mindfulness, not to push pain away, but to recognize it as part of our human experience. When we look deeply into our anger, fear, or despair, we begin to see their roots, unmet needs, old wounds, or perhaps generations of pain passed down to us. And only by seeing clearly can compassion arise. Thich Nhat Hanh calls this practice interbeing. It means that nothing exists by itself, not even our suffering. It is connected to countless causes and conditions, the way we were raised, the world we live in, the people we love, and those who have hurt us. When we see this web of connection, something softens inside us. We begin to forgive, not because the pain disappears, but because we finally understand. So, my friends, before we can bloom like the lotus, we must walk through the mud consciously, not as victims of life, but as witnesses of our own awakening. Let us pause here, breathe, and prepare to journey deeper toward the gentle art of embracing the present moment, where transformation truly begins. 2. Embracing the present moment. Dear friends, we've walked through the mud together, faced our pain, touched its roots, and held it with compassion. Now, Thich Nhat Hanh invites us to take the next step, to return home, to the present moment. Because the present is not just a point in time, it's a refuge, a sacred space where life reveals itself in its purest form. Yet most of us live anywhere but here. Our bodies are in the present, but our minds wander between the echoes of the past and the shadows of the future. Thich Nhat Hanh teaches us that peace is already available, right here, if only we learn to stop and breathe. He says, "The miracle is not to walk on water. The miracle is to walk on the earth, to walk slowly, to feel the ground beneath our feet, to drink our tea fully, with awareness, as if it were the first and last sip of our lives. That's mindfulness, not an escape from reality, but a return to it. Each breath can be a bridge, connecting body and mind, sorrow and serenity. And in that connection, the storm quiets. The chaos softens. Because when you breathe deeply into this moment, you are no longer lost. You are alive. My friends, the art of transformation begins here, not in changing what has been, but in being fully present with what is. The more we practice this, the less power our suffering holds over us. It becomes a teacher, not a jailer. Now, as we prepare for the next chapter, let us pause once more, to take a mindful breath, to feel the peace that was never gone, only waiting to be noticed. In the next part, we will explore how compassion, like sunlight, can transform the darkest corners of our hearts into gardens of understanding. 3. The healing power of compassion. Dear friends, we've learned to breathe through our pain, to be present with our suffering without running from it. Now Thich Nhat Hanh opens the next door, the door of compassion. Because mindfulness without compassion is like a lamp without light. It exists, but it cannot illuminate the darkness. Compassion, he says, begins not with others, but with yourself. Too often we treat our pain like an enemy to be conquered, instead of a child to be comforted. But when you hold your suffering tenderly, as a mother holds her crying baby, something miraculous happens. The pain softens, the heart opens, and understanding begins to bloom. He writes, when you begin to understand your own suffering, compassion naturally arises. And that compassion doesn't stop with you. It spills outward, toward others who hurt, even those who've hurt you. Because once you've seen your own wounds clearly, you can't help but see the wounds of others behind their anger, fear, or cruelty. You start to realize that everyone is doing the best they can with the pain they carry. Imagine walking through life with that understanding. Every harsh word becomes an echo of someone's inner turmoil. Every act of unkindness, a cry for help. When your heart sees that, resentment loses its grip and forgiveness becomes possible. Compassion is not weakness. It's the deepest strength of all. The strength to look at suffering, to stay with it, and to respond with love instead of hatred. It's what turns victims into healers and wounds into wisdom. So, dear listeners, take this moment. Place a hand over your heart, breathe deeply, and silently whisper, "May I be kind to myself. May I be kind to others." That is where healing begins, not in changing the world, but in softening the way we see it. And as this compassion deepens, Thich Nhat Hanh guides us toward one of his most profound lessons: how interbeing, the truth that we are all connected, reshapes the way we understand life, love, and even suffering itself. 40. We are the truth of connection. Dear friends, take a moment and look around you, the room, the sky, the sound of your breath. In this simple awareness, Thich Nhat Hanh invites us to touch one of life's most beautiful truths. We do not exist alone. Every heartbeat, every breath, every joy and sorrow, they all intertwine with the lives around us. He calls this truth interbeing. You and I, the tree outside your window, the clouds drifting by, we all are. The paper you hold was once a tree. That tree needed sunlight, rain, and soil. And those, in turn, depend on the entire cosmos. Nothing stands apart. Everything is connected. When you see this clearly, something shifts inside you. The boundaries between me and you start to dissolve. Anger softens. Compassion grows. Because how can you truly harm another when you see that they are a part of you? How can you pollute the earth when you know she is your own breath, your own home? Thich Nhat Hanh tells us, if you are a poet, you will see clearly that there is a cloud floating in this sheet of paper. That cloud became rain. That rain became the tree, and the tree became this page. So when you read, you are touching the cloud, the rain, the sun, the whole universe in one gesture. This understanding is not abstract philosophy. It's a practice of peace. When you walk mindfully, you walk not just for yourself, but for those who cannot walk. When you breathe calmly, you breathe for those caught in chaos. Your peace becomes a bridge, your stillness, a gift to the world. And here lies the secret of no mud, no lotus. When we see that our suffering is connected to all beings, it no longer feels lonely. It becomes a shared human soil from which compassion, resilience, and love can grow. So, dear listener, remember this. You are not a drop lost in the ocean. You are the ocean in a drop. And as we reach the final part of this journey, Thich Nhat Hanh leads us to the blossom itself. How from mindfulness, compassion, and interbeing, the lotus of joy unfolds. 5. The lotus of joy. Dear friends, we have journeyed through the mud, the suffering, the fear, the setbacks. We have paused, breathed, embraced the present, cultivated compassion, and touched the truth of our interconnection. Now, we arrive at the heart of Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching, the lotus itself, the joy that rises from our struggles. The lotus does not emerge from clear water. It rises from the mud, pushing through darkness to bloom in the sunlight. So too with our hearts, our joy, our peace, our wisdom, they are born not despite suffering, but because of it. Thich Nhat Hanh reminds us that happiness is not a prize at the end of effort, nor a fleeting escape from pain. It is a practice, a conscious turning toward life with eyes wide open, with presence and care. Every mindful breath, every act of kindness, every moment of awareness is a petal unfolding. And here is the profound secret. The lotus does not reject the mud, it thrives because of it. So do we. When we allow ourselves to fully feel, to deeply see, to compassionately embrace both our own pain and the suffering of others, we nourish the soil from which joy, clarity, and freedom blossom. Dear listener, take a moment now. Breathe deeply. Feel your feet on the ground. Place a hand over your heart. Acknowledge your struggles, your fears, your setbacks. And quietly, tenderly, invite the lotus of joy to rise within you. This is the art of transformation, not an avoidance of life's darkness, but a gentle, mindful, compassionate walking through it until the heart blooms, resilient and radiant, like the lotus emerging from the mud. And as we close this journey together, remember, life will always bring mud, but with mindfulness, compassion, and presence, you will always have the lotus. Dear friends, we have walked together through the mud of life, through pain, fear, and the shadows that often cloud our hearts. And yet, we have seen the promise hidden within that very mud, the lotus of joy, the peace that arises when we face life with mindfulness and compassion. Thich Nhat Hanh teaches us that suffering is not a curse, nor a burden to be escaped. It is a teacher, a companion, a path that can lead us to clarity, resilience, and love. When we breathe with our pain, embrace it with tenderness, and see our connection to all beings, something transforms. What once felt heavy becomes soil from which our hearts can bloom. Remember this: every breath can be a seed of peace. Every act of compassion toward yourself or another is a petal unfolding. And every moment of mindful presence is a step toward freedom, toward a life where joy is not a distant destination, but a lotus rising from the very mud we once feared. Carry this with you beyond today, beyond this episode. When life brings its inevitable hardships, pause, breathe, look deeply, embrace what is, and allow your heart to bloom. Thank you for walking this path with us on Guide to Reads. If this episode touched you, share it with someone who might need a gentle reminder that even in suffering, there is beauty, there is growth, there is hope. Until we meet again, keep breathing, keep noticing, and keep allowing the lotus to rise.